Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
Why don't you want to come with me? My daughter will have more opportunities there. It's Europe, not your backwater. A phone call interrupted a heated conversation. Come and see, it's a 3-room. I'm waiting. What are you thinking? I'm not going to sell the apartment. I've got a job here. My daughter's got school. What are you doing all of a sudden? I'm entitled to this apartment too. If you don't want to sell, I'll sell my share, but you have priority to buy my share. Hurry up, or you'll be living with strangers. I've been paying for your share for 11 years. It's been mine for a long time. You shouldn't have. I didn't ask you to do that. I consulted a lawyer. You have no right to anything here. Take your stuff and go back where you came from. Well, you're gonna regret this. Lost the battle, but not the war, Emma said angrily and slammed the door shut. After the movie Harvey, hugging his green-eyed beauty, Emma said, "We study with you in different institutes, but I hope to live together. Are you proposing to me?" "Well, almost. I haven't bought you a ring yet, but as soon as I look for one, I'll go to my parents to ask for your hand in marriage." When they said goodbye at home, they could not part. Each kiss was the last, and everything began again. Until her mother called her daughter home from the balcony with a menacing voice. Immediately bouncing away from each other, Emma scurried into the entryway. They were both students. She at the Faculty of Foreign Languages, he at Polytechnic and Software Engineering. They'd met on the bus when they'd been riding on the footboard during rush hour. Harvey was a very independent guy. His mother raised him alone, so there was no hope that someone would help him. They lived more than modestly, but always in their small one-room apartment. It was clean, smelled cozy pies. Mom, Lucy, was a simple woman, strict during her work at the factory in the trade union committee. She developed a commanding voice and a keen sense of justice. She had to appear in court to defend the rights of women workers, and there were many things. She loved her son very much. He was born of a beloved man who left her early, but Harvey knew only good things about his father, though he did not remember him well. Emma was a self-confident girl, a little narcissistic. She knew perfectly well what men liked, but she gave Harvey no reason to be jealous of her. She treasured their friendship. Harvey was like her father, Harry. Hands grew from the right place, thoughtful, scratched the back of his head before deciding on something, walked around, thought, and only then made a decision. Emma's mom, Naomi, never worked and was a real keeper of the hearth. They had an au pair. That's why their huge apartment was always shiny. Parents were often abroad, on duty father. Having met a few times in transportation, the guys decided to get acquainted. Both realized at once that their friendship would grow into something more. At first glance, between the guys had little in common. Harvey was always simply dressed, jeans, t-shirts, sneakers. In winter, a jacket always open and a knitted cap. Emma, on the other hand, was always dressed to the hilt. They grew up in families with different incomes and values, but this did not prevent the boys from spending a lot of time together. One day, Lucy met them in the street. "Hello, young people. How are you?" Looking at the girl, the woman asked. "Good, I suppose." She tried to make her voice sound confident. She wanted Lucy to like her. "Emma, this is my mom, Lucy. Mom, this is Emma. I told you about her." Yeah, I realized that's who you told me about." The girl was in a bad mood. She felt that she didn't like her future mother-in-law and immediately got down. "What are you doing?" Harvey asked her when her mom said goodbye and left. "What a look your mom has. I think she saw the state of my liver. She didn't like me. The important thing is that I like you and we're gonna get married. I wouldn't be so sure after meeting your mom. My mom had a hard life. She buried her husband early and raised me alone." "You told me that already." Emma stopped him nervously. "You don't owe me an explanation. You don't owe me anything, Harvey. Things will be different in our relationship. There will be trust and love between us." And he reached up to kiss her. But she made it his fault that his mother didn't like him. "Harvey, I don't want to. That's enough. I'm going home. Don't walk me home. I'll take a cab." Lucy was waiting for him at home, wanting to talk to him. "How long have you known this girl?" "About 6 months. Why?" "You didn't like her and you couldn't even hide your displeasure." "It's okay that I like her. You're not the one who's going to live with her, I am." Are you two that serious? Yes, it's serious. We love each other. I hope you're not getting married tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, but in a year when we graduate. Well, thank God, at least you were smart enough for that, said the woman, and wishing her son good night, went to rest. Harvey went to the kitchen. It was there that the couch where he slept was located. It was so comfortable for him. When he was getting ready, he could have a snack and coffee if he needed to study longer to prepare for seminars. But today, he was resentful of his mom. Such blatant disrespect he didn't like. Today, he recognized a different side of her, and that surprised him. Harvey had always worked part-time. He couldn't sit on his mother's neck. Firstly, it was not manly, and secondly, he needed money to let modest gifts, but to please his green-eyed. One day he heard on the phone, as she advised her friend to buy a perfume, of which she herself is crazy about, Christian Dior firm Miss Dior. You will not regret the money spent. You will bathe in this fragrance, and then it can never forget it. He wanted to surprise his beloved for New Year's Eve. Harvey had never been to such stores, and at first he even stopped in front of the entrance. It was too pompous. But the desire to surprise Emma made him boldly take the handle of the door and enter the realm of fragrances, beautiful bottles, illuminated showcases, and a selection of beautiful girls. Seeing the dollar price tag surprised him. He smiled guiltily, and it separated Harvey and perfume forever. He went into that store one more time to look at that luxury, the stunning beauty of the bottles. He found Emma's favorite fragrance. The price tag has not changed since then, $500, so wanted to ask if anyone buys such an expensive perfume, but was shy. He never came to this store again because he earned such money for 2 months, fulfilling orders of the same poor guys. When there were no orders for programs, he worked as a courier. The money was paid immediately, which was also convenient. That's how he got by. He was not an excellent student, but a solid chorus that adorned his grade book. You just couldn't go any lower or you'd lose your scholarship. Emma could not work part-time. Her father, as the head of a large enterprise, could provide for his favorite daughter. But she looked up to Harvey and worked part-time translating. She took simple texts, translated them, and got her remuneration. The guys lived an interesting student life and dreamed of their wedding. They met chastely, which is a great rarity nowadays. He was afraid of offending her with his desire to possess her before they were married. Emma appreciated this very much and considered him a real man. She felt his tenderness, his love, his desire to please her. It was hard for him to express his love in words because words did not convey the depth of Harvey's feelings. So he would take her hand, look into those green lakes, and she would understand. Their hearts yearned more and more to merge with each other. They were living the same dream of marriage. Harvey had been saving for the wedding for a long time. He gave some of the money he earned to his mom, which made her eyes moist, and she called him the breadwinner. If Daddy could see you, he'd be proud of you, son. Please don't make me out to be a superhero. I'm sure that's what all sons do who take care of their moms. She adored him. The son looked a lot like Billy, his father, Lucy's husband. The day came when the youngsters decided to introduce their parents. Presenting her hand for introduction to the master of the house, she said emphatically, politely, "Lucy is a widow." She recognized him at once. He hadn't changed much since Billy's passing. The man held her gaze for a moment and then immediately began to invite everyone to the table. Lucy noted the rich decoration of the apartment, the beautifully set table. Everything felt like a desire to show his unlimited possibilities. Seeing all this, Lucy believed even more that her son would have a hard time with such a woman. The son was enchanted by the girl and was in heaven, thinking that his Emma was the light in the window. But for the sake of justice, it should have been noted that their love was mutual. Emma blossomed from the warmth of the words of Shenka, whom she loved. At such moments, she remembered how it was with Nikolai. He was real. She had really married. He'd stood as a stone wall for his family. But today, men had replaced the stone with drywall, and things had become so unreliable. She woke up when her son put his hand on her palm. "Mom, what are you thinking about?" "Oh, just a little girl thing, son." Nami was talking about France. She loved everything French: perfume, cosmetics, wine, dishes. The glasses she had put on the table today were made of fine French glass. She wanted to drink to the happiness of the young people. The parents were preparing for the wedding. and the young people were engaged in the most pleasant thing, the choice of outfits, the bride's hair and wedding makeup. Emma chose the best salon in town. The price did not interest her, only if there were good masters. Later, when she sees herself in the mirror, she will say to the masters, "Thank you, you're real magicians." They'll smile modestly and say, "We didn't do anything special, it's our job." "Then you're so beautiful, nature did everything for us." Emma thought that the money they took from her must have included those compliments too. The dress brought to the bride from France itself was dazzling. It didn't even have to be customized. It was as if the master had sat in the next room and sewed it for her. Emma, you in general, it is stunning and admired bridesmaids dressed the bride. "You are so beautiful, just fantastic." Emma did not argue. She was pleased to hear from the girls such words of admiration. When all the questions on the wedding organization were solved, Lucy started to go home. "Mom, what's your hurry?" "I'm going, son." "Don't worry, I'll get there on my own." "I'll call you a cab." My son was worried. "Come on, I'll walk a bit," and she said goodbye and left. The weather was beautiful, perfect for reminiscing. She looked around and realized she was not far from the waterfront. "That's fine, I'll breathe the river air," thought the woman, and started to walk down to the water. Her memory brought her back to the events of 25 years ago. A quarter of a century had passed. God, how long ago was it? And had it been at all? Yes, it must have been if she'd seen Harry. He looks good, and I must not look so good if he didn't recognize me. Oh, whatever. Recognize me, didn't recognize me, it doesn't matter. They met at the Institute of Technology at the Department of Design and Technological Support of Machine Building Production. There weren't many girls in that department, 5 of them, the other 45 guys. Harry and Billy became instant friends. They were always arguing at recess, proving something to each other. The guys always invited girls from the Teacher Training Institute to the party, and this New Year's Eve party was no exception. Girls from the Teacher Training College came to it. Lucy smiled. It was nice to remember her youth, her first love. She felt tired and sat down on a bench. Billy had asked her to all the dances that evening. Harry stood alone until he saw her. The thoughtful, thin girl, whose brown eyes seemed huge in her pale face, stood waiting to be asked to dance, and when Harry asked her, she was embarrassed and frightened. That's when things started to turn around for them. His parents were abroad at the time, working there for 3 years. He was staying with his grandmother. Selena was a beautiful girl. She was brought up in an orphanage, lived in a communal room. She studied at a teacher's college, and to make a living she scrubbed floors in 2 entrances. Her neighbors helped her as much as they could. They all loved this kind, soulful girl. Not often, but the 4 of them went for walks. Selena always clung to Harry and felt protected. The boy would stay overnight at her place, and Selena felt like they had a family. And so a year passed. Harry's parents returned, and at that moment she announced her pregnancy. How unfortunate, the young man thought. Maybe it's time to meet the parents, Selena asked cautiously. Let's not burden my parents right away. They just arrived, and I don't want to put problems on them. You think our child is a problem? She said apprehensively, realizing that his attitude didn't bode well. I thought you'd be happy to have a baby. Light, you can't hear me. He left the room with determination and slammed the door shut. She sensed something was wrong, but she couldn't guess the reason. Harry should tell her the reason. After all, they were doing so well. And he couldn't tell her that his parents not only didn't want to meet the girl, but they didn't want her as a relative either. Who did you get involved with? Some homeless orphanage girl. No family, no tribe. I understand what you were thinking while your mother was yelling, but you should have used your brains in between. You're not stupid. How can we show her to our acquaintances? She's a normal, nice girl. So what if she's in an orphanage? We're all under God. It's not her fault she went there. It's just the way things are. Harry, maybe I'm missing something, or maybe you're not telling me the truth. Is there any reason other than you've been together over a year? Yeah, she's expecting a baby. Well, let her have it, who cares? But it's my baby. That's why I'm waiting for him. He's your grandson or granddaughter. What makes you think it's your baby? These girls are very cunning. They'll hang someone else's baby without blinking an eye. That's not the case. I'm her first man, so I know it's mine. So, here's the deal. If you want to get married, Live with her in her communal apartment. Don't ask for money, we won't give you a dime. You're the man, you decide, or you dump her. Marry Naomi, the deputy minister's daughter, and you'll have everything. Think. He didn't call or visit Celine for a month. She cried at night and didn't know what to do. One day when she opened the door, Lucy saw her on the doorstep of her apartment. She asked to speak to Harry because she needed to know his decision. But Harry refused to talk, telling his friends to mind their own business. One of the neighbors suggested to Celine to write to the dean's office of the institute. Let them talk to him there in a manly way. But she, afraid that she could ruin his career, refused this option. Deciding to do everything themselves, the women went to a lawyer, Natalie, to write a proper letter and send it to the place of study of this scoundrel. She was long retired, knew Selena well, felt sorry for her, and when she was approached with a request, decided to protect the girl. Harry came running the next day. "Bitch, what did you do?" He yelled across the apartment. "What do you mean?" Selena asked, almost whispering in fright. "Why did you write a letter to the institute? Do you think that's how you want to tie me to you?" And that's what I saw, and he showed the mother of his child a huge dummy. "I didn't write anything. What letter?" "Well, someone did it at your request. Someone wanted to ruin my life. That my mother was right about girls like you." "Harry, but you've already ruined my life. How am I supposed to live? And it doesn't bother you that your child will live in poverty. It's not his fault he's got a daddy like that. I don't know who wrote that letter, but I'm sure it was the right thing to do. Get out of here." Her cheeks were burning, her eyes lightening. He didn't recognize his submissive Selena. The letter went into great detail. Harry stood in the dean's office like a spitfire. The boys from the group were crowding the door, and when Billy heard that his friend was rejecting the baby, saying it wasn't his, he opened the door and called him a scoundrel. Harry had to leave the institute, and only a year later, when things had calmed down, enrolled in another. The boys never saw him again. Billy married Lucy after graduating from the institute. It was a student wedding, fun, but not rich. But they did it with their own money. Billy was already working at the factory when Harry was appointed chief engineer and then director. They didn't see each other for a while, but when there was an accident in the shop where 2 people were hurt, Mikhailov blamed Billy for everything, demanding that he be put on trial and that no favors be given to him. Although witnesses said that the shop manager was not at work that day, he was at a meeting with the chief engineer, but it was difficult to change Mikhailov's mind. That night he became ill. The ambulance took a long time to arrive, but he waited for it, smiled, as if apologizing for disturbing, and died. No matter how much the doctors tried to bring him back to life, they failed. So when Harvey told her that he was seeing Emma, she didn't want to believe that it was her father, albeit indirectly, who was responsible for her husband's death. She believed that by doing so, Harry had avenged Billy on the scoundrel. Lucy glanced at her watch and hurried home. The evening of reminiscence was over. Harry's time out of school had not been wasted. His mother and father had invited Naomi and her parents to visit. He didn't like the girl very much. Whereas Selena was a natural blonde, this one was a burly brunette, wasn't as fragile as the one he rejected, and didn't feel like protecting her at all. It took a couple months for Harry to get the urge to ask her out. Gradually, the young people got used to each other, meeting more often, and finally Harry kissed Nina for the first time. It seemed to him that his kiss was her first, because he had never kissed her before. That was a good thing, he encouraged himself. There were more questions if she'd done it skillfully. Then what would he be? He and Naomi had gotten married when Harry was in his last year of college. It was a lavish wedding. Ministers, deputy ministers, journalists, glossy magazine editors. There was a lot of noise, and of course, Selena couldn't help but see it. "Son, your daddy's a bastard, marrying a bag of money." She named her son Anthony. It was the name of her friend at the orphanage who always protected her. 3 years after her marriage, Naomi confessed she was barren. They thought long and hard and decided to take a child from the orphanage. "Well, Mom, you didn't want to see your grandson or granddaughter from an orphanage, and now you suggest taking a child from an orphanage. A complete stranger to me, and you don't even know who he was born to. Maybe from a bitter drunk or a drug addict. Other kids don't get there. You've ruined my life." The woman pressed her thin lips and felt guilty, but there was nothing she could do. Are you happy now? I have everything but happiness. Well, you love Naomi. She's a wonderful hostess, a good-looking woman. These things happen in life. The mother reassured her son. They were very lucky. The orphanage had a 3-year-old girl whose parents had been killed in a car accident. Naomi's father, through his channels, learned that they were decent people. The mother taught a foreign language at school, and the father worked as an engineer at the factory. The little girl had no other relatives, and the young couple adopted her. The name Anya was changed to Emma, and the girl began to grow up in the family without needing anything. The parents immediately agreed not to tell the child anything about her past. They're her parents, that's all. Now they're getting their little girl married, and time flies by. And soon Naomi and Harry will have a new status, grandparents. When Emma and Harvey's wedding was in full swing, the bride and groom dance was announced. It is a beautiful tradition that demonstrates through the language of dance the feelings of the young ones for each other. Harvey immediately decided that they would dance their first wedding dance, because a wedding without a dance is like New Year's Eve without an Olivier salad, and it was a waltz. The first chords of the romantic melody sounded. The young wife put her hand in his, took her head back a little, straightened her back, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the young floated down the hall in the rhythm of the waltz. When the music ended, the young people pressed themselves against each other, and their first waltz as husband and wife was still playing in their heads. Lucy's only regret was that there was no Billy to rejoice over her happy son. Harry came up to her and asked her to dance. She was confused, but when she saw Harvey looking at them, she accepted. "I recognized you, but not right away," her former friend said in her ear. "Well, thank God. I thought you changed beyond recognition. Good guy you brought up. I'm glad that my daughter will have such a husband. He doesn't want any help. He does everything himself. A man. Good for you. Yeah, well, you weren't that kind of man when you needed one. I'm not gonna argue. I'm ashamed of what I did, and I hate to think about it. Does your son know we know each other?" "No, I haven't told him yet. I'm still not quite sure if I should." The dance ended, and Harry escorted the lady to her seat. Then many years ago, Celine had seen on the news and read in the papers that the deputy minister's daughter Naomi was marrying Harry, who had professed his love for her and vowed to be there for her always. She recalled her state of mind at that moment. Kicking out her failed husband and father, Selena realized that she had been wrong about Harry. But why had she trusted him so easily? It seemed to her that he loved her. Then she realized that the key word seemed, because between the orphanage and the daughter of the deputy minister, he chose money and comfort. The subject is as old as the world. How many books have been written about gullible fools like her, and how many movies have been made? Today she joins the ranks of the abandoned and fatherless. Why did she suddenly think it would be different for her? She's always been a cautious girl. Life has taught her not to trust people, and this time nothing stopped her. What to cry now? Now she should think about the baby and try to be a good mother if she couldn't be a wife. Selena was taking Harry's betrayal hard. When she was alone, the incessant and sometimes annoying advice of her neighbors could be heard in her ears. "Don't worry, be patient. Everything will be fine." They soothed her. But how and in what way would it be fine? Everything around her was collapsing, and this advice seemed to her like a mockery. She did not see not only the brightness, but on the contrary, faced even more problems. The pregnancy was easy, and it gave her the opportunity to finish the 3rd year of college. The labor was easy, but the baby was a loudmouth. He gave such nightly concerts, and by morning he fell asleep. Therefore, the young mother fell off her feet and fell asleep next to her son as soon as he left for intermission. She also washed the floors. The old grandmothers at the entrance rocked the stroller with the child. So the vacations passed, and it was necessary to return to study. She had 6 months left, and then the practice began. Selena's life was completely different from that of her friends from her college group. It was hard for them to understand her. Many condemned the girl for deciding to give birth without a husband, condemning herself to poverty and scaring away potential suitors. Many of her classmates had already married and lived happily with their husbands and small children, and Selena herself envied them kindly. They had a family, something she had never had in her life. But she had a son she loved and was willing to do anything she could for him. Only she could do too little. The whole neighborhood helped her. She had a little trouble with her grades, but she made it through the 6-month shift. When she returned home, she wanted to howl with loneliness and longing, but she gathered her strength, wiped her tears, and came to her son with a smile. How many people are helping us, right, son? It's a sin to cry. There was no one to resent. She met Harvey herself. No one pulled her into bed. She decided to give birth herself. So get it and sign for what we fought, as they say. Her neighbors were helping her, but she knew that many people were judging her. The man she was willing to do anything for had cheated her and traded her handsome son for a woman with money. She didn't resent them. When Anthony was a year old, she decided to call Harry and tell him about her son. He's a father after all, and she wouldn't mind him hanging out with her son. Overcoming her pride and shame, she called, but he had changed his phone number a long time ago. Probably knew his ex could call. She even felt better. She wanted to tell him, but she couldn't. But her heart was pounding as she dialed his number. Did she still love him, knowing he'd left her for someone else? No, that was a question she couldn't answer even to herself. Finally, her diploma was complete, and she could work as a home educator as a governess. Anthony was much calmer, and she decided to advertise for people who wanted to prepare their children for school. 2 people came forward. A neighbor picked up her son while she worked with the children. It was a different kind of money than mopping floors in the entryway, but she did not give up this work. The children she worked with were wonderful, especially Veronica. She picked up everything on the fly. Why didn't you bring slippers? It's cold in tights. Tell your mom to put them in a bag for you. I will. You won't forget? I don't have a mom. Daddy says she's far away in heaven watching me. There was regret and bewilderment in Selena's eyes. What could have happened to a young woman? When she opened the door to Veronica's dad, she reminded him about the second shoe. Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll be sure to bring them to the next class. Veronica said she didn't have a mom. Yes, she does. My Betty couldn't beat a disease that was stronger and more insidious than she was. We've been without her for 2 years. We're trying to get by. Veronica's doing great. I don't think you'll have any problems at school. Thank you so much for your daughter. She loves practicing with you. And when the girl was about to go to 1st grade and Selena was saying goodbye to her, they both had tears in their eyes. Thank you, Selena. I'll never forget you. I won't forget you. You're a good girl. You're gonna be fine. Selena, come and visit us on September 1st. We'll celebrate Knowledge Day. But I have a little son. I know, so come together. A week later, they sat together at the table, drank champagne, and congratulated Veronica on the beginning of the school year. Having gone through all the stages of the relationship from bouquet candy to a velvet box with a ring, Selena accepted Archie's proposal and married him. From ordinary gratitude to love is much less than 1 step, especially if it's little Anthony's step. For 2 years, Veronica's dad wooed Selena, but it was all decided by one word. One day her son had called Archie daddy. She had been very wary of this courtship. Now she wasn't alone, and the responsibility was twofold. She had to make sure that not only she was happy, but also her son. Thinking that there was no more room for love in her heart, she kept burying herself for the mistake she had made many years ago. The scar remained for the rest of her life. Strangely, the memories of Harry were blurring with each passing day. She couldn't remember him well, and even when she closed her eyes, wanting to visualize his image, it was her Anthony in front of her, the one man she would run after for the rest of her life. Her soul was mangled by pain, fear, and hardship, and Archie was like a doctor treating, only his medicine was sweet, tasty, and called love. Of course, she couldn't undo the mistakes of her youth, but she could avoid or minimize them. Long ago, she had given in to her feelings, lived with her heart, dissolved into her first love. Now her mind was involved in those feelings, and only when she realized that this was the man she wanted to live with for the rest of her life did her heart open, and she responded to Archie's feelings. They renovated the communal room and rented it out and moved into Archie's apartment. Her husband was the head of the legal department at the factory and earned a good salary. The apartment was 3-roomed. After the 18-meter communal room for Selena, it was a palace. For the first time in many years, Archie quietly went to work without worrying about Veronica and the house. The girl did not call Selena mommy, and no one rushed her. The child remembered her mother perfectly well and could not call a stranger's aunt with this native word at once. Returning from school with Veronica, she bumped into Harry at the doorway. "You?" he asked in surprise. I answered Selena calmly. "You live in this house?" "What did you think I lived in my uncle's cabin?" "No, of course not." Sorry, he couldn't take his eyes off the boy, and only when the child hid behind Selena asked, "Is that my son?" "That's my son." Trying not to give away her excitement, Selena replied. But she wasn't very good at it. "Mine, you hear me? You didn't have him when you traded him for money and connections, and I didn't trade it for humiliation in front of you to get it back." "Who's your husband?" "This house is mostly occupied by the plant's senior staff. My husband is the head of the legal department at the plant." She could have sent him away, but she wanted to see how he reacted. "Archie?" "Yes, he's my husband and the father of these beautiful children." Harry looked at Selena and noted that the girl he had fallen in love with at first sight had grown into a beautiful adult woman. He was nervous. Selena saw it and didn't understand why. After all, he had lived, slept, and loved for 6 years without being tormented by any pains of conscience or impulses of remorse. And now when he saw his son, he became nervous. He was unpleasant to her. She wrinkled her nose. "We must go. Goodbye," and opened the door of the entrance and went into the house. The whole evening, remembering this meeting, Harry walked around in a frenzy. His boy, his son, seemed happy around his mother. He found some resemblance to himself, the brunette hair, the nose. He was a sturdy boy, well-dressed. And his mom's eyes, big brown ones. So Archie married Selena. He'd heard good things about him. He remembered the dislike with which Selena's big brown eyes had looked at him. It never left him that Selena hated him. Because that's the way it is, Harry answered to himself. Harry deserved it. The table was set for dinner and Naomi called Harry over. "I thought you weren't coming," said her wife. "I've called you 3 times already." "I'm not hungry," he replied, and closed himself in his study. He decided to sleep here tonight so that his wife wouldn't bother him with her questions. He dreamed of the first time he had seen Selena on New Year's Eve and asked her to dance. He took her hand, but a little boy grabbed Selena by the hem of her dress and shouted at her, "Mommy, don't go dancing with him. He's bad." Harry opened his eyes and looked at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. He couldn't get any more sleep. He remembered that he had read a good expression about betrayal, but the author was unknown. Before you brazenly break someone's heart, wipe your feet on someone's feelings. Remember, the cash register is somewhere ahead of you. You'll have to pay for everything. And he paid in full. He would never have any children of his own. In the morning, he drank a large cup of black coffee and went to work. They hadn't seen Sveta for a long time, and when they ran into each other again, she was holding a blue ruffled bundle. "Congratulations on your son." "Not necessarily. The last person I expect congratulations from is you." He looked at her enviously, and only when the door slammed shut did he go to his room. It had been 2 years since Selena and Archie had had a son. Veronica had been calling Selena mom for a long time, telling her all her secrets, and Archie was happy. Serialsho went to 1st grade, and his older sister helped him with his lessons. One day, standing at the kitchen window, Selena saw Harry in the yard with a little girl, about 3 years old. She was funny with her legs. It seemed that she had been walking for a long time and the child was just tired. Where did this child come from? Did Harry have a girl? They've lived a long time for themselves, Selena thought and pulled back the curtain. Many years had passed since then. The little girl had managed to marry a nice guy, and Harry and Naomi soon became grandparents. Granddaughter Elizabeth was the main treasure on Selene. She was an affectionate, gentle child. However, grandchildren are no different. Emma worked for a German company with a representative office in their town. Harvey was a specialist in computer technology. In the firm where he was hired to work, his duties included software and automation of production processes. The guys were getting a good deal, and after 2 years, they were able to move out of the rented apartment into their own 3-room apartment, bought with the money they earned. When Elizabeth was 5 years old, something broke in their family life, so it seemed to Geneva. Everything seemed to be the same, but it wasn't. Emma began to get headaches more and more often. More and more often she was late at work, explaining that it was a heavy workload. "You can't just pay money like that. Don't you know Germans?" She justified herself. There was no reason not to believe her. Family is trust after all. He chased away the sad thoughts that came into his head every time Emma came home late from work. He would give a lot to bring peace and love back into the house. Harvey looked with bated breath at their wedding picture, at their happy faces. How much had changed since then? All these years he had tried to be a good husband and father. They had a wonderful relationship with their daughter. For some reason she told him and not her mom about her problems, and her dad solved them very quickly. For some reason she told her father, not her mother, about her first unhappy love for her neighbor Valka, who lived across the street. Perhaps not every woman can be a mother. Emma didn't make it. Tonight he went to bed without his wife again. After calling her without any hope of hearing her voice, he lay staring at the ceiling. It was a strange night. It made him uneasy, and it made him think that he would never be able to live a normal life again. Such thoughts would never have occurred to him before. For 7 years he had had a beautiful family, and now what was he to his wife? He couldn't answer that question himself, and Emma skillfully avoided talking about it every time. Harvey got up in the morning and found Emma not at home. After sending his daughter to school, he drove to his wife's workplace. The pretty receptionist, doll-faced, said hello kindly and told him that Emma had quit. How could that be? We were surprised. She came in yesterday morning, put in her notice. Come on in, Julia will tell you all about it. He stood in front of the massive door of Julia's department head. Come in, she said in a well-smoked voice. Hello, I'm Emma's husband. I understand. Have a seat. Is she all right? Is she alive and well? Harvey asked with concern in his voice. What's gonna happen to her? She's alive and well, in love with the translator Walter Meyer, with whom she left yesterday morning for Germany, Julia finished. Are you kidding? Harvey asked. Not at all. Are such words joking? I talked to her, but she wouldn't even listen to me. Here's the letter she left you. I asked her to write it, knowing that you would come to me and look me in the eye. And she handed him the sealed envelope. I don't think you should be sad. There's plenty of such goodness in our country. You'll meet a good woman. Maybe I will, but what am I gonna tell a 7-year-old? I'd be very surprised if you said she was a good, loving mother. I'm gonna go, Harvey said, and said goodbye. He wasn't going to discuss his family problems with a stranger. He got in his car and opened the envelope. Harvey, I'm going to Germany with Walter. We love each other and want to be together. I think Elizabeth has enough love from his grandparents and yours. We've never been close, so she won't notice my absence. I want to be happy. Goodbye, and I'm sorry. I'll text or call my parents. Emma. He leaned on the steering wheel and didn't even notice he'd hit the horn until a security guard knocked on his window as he exited the office. Sorry, said Harvey and started the car. He had clearly underestimated his wife. She was a lot worse than he thought she was. All he cared about now was his daughter. What to tell the kid? If the mother didn't love her, the child was attached to her. He should have been at work a long time ago. Harvey drove the car, realizing he was worried. His hands on the wheel were shaking and he couldn't concentrate on the road. Not enough to leave a child orphan, the man thought, and stopped the car. He was circling the car when his phone rang. It was a co-worker, a friend, a good guy, Billy. Harvey, what's wrong? Where are you? There's a meeting today. You have to report on your project. Haven't you forgotten? He glanced at his watch, tensed, and answered briefly. I'll be right there. The first thing Elizabeth asked when Harvey came home from work was where Mom was. Elizabeth, Mom was sent on a business trip to Germany, and she didn't even tell you. Why not? I know where she is. It was just urgent and even unexpected. Someone got sick, and Mom had to fill in for that person. For how long? She said 2 months. So how long? Can we go to her place? I don't think so. Mom said something about a secret facility. They don't let anyone in there, and they won't let Mom out for a while. He told whatever he could think of, because the girl was very nervous and wanted to know as much as possible. After trying to convince her to wait, he reminded her of her lessons. Harvey was not finding it easy. In Emma's absence, daughter and father had grown even closer. After doing her homework, Elizabeth lay at her father's side and said, I think Mommy has abandoned us. Why do you think that? She doesn't call us. She doesn't go online to talk to us. That means she doesn't want to see us. You're wrong. Mom's at work. Serious work. Secret. The child's face became sad. She kissed her father on the cheek and said she was going to bed. And sleep must have forgotten its way back to him. Emma's outburst had done its work. He lay there wondering how to go on, what to tell the child. She wasn't a fool to believe in secret work all the time. He could not explain, but at the name and deed of his wife, everything raged inside with indignation and anger. I should consult my mother, Harvey thought. Turning his head to the other half of the bed where Emma had once lain, his heart ached. On the bedside table at her side, he saw a magazine. It was a regular glossy publication that told of all the gossip. At the end of the magazine, he saw the name Emma, the meaning of the name. He found it interesting and started reading. He ran through the first lines quickly with his eyes. But from the part where the girlfriends dislike Emma, he started reading. Disliking Emma for her arrogance for sure, Harvey thought. She'd never had any girlfriends. The ones at the wedding were more likely to come not to her, but to find wealthy men. In addition, she tends to do something first and then think, which inevitably leads to many mistakes. That's what Harvey thought of my wife. The first marriage is often a failure. The second marriage may be to a foreigner. Emma's always the favorite of the family, but less happy in adulthood and marriage. Harvey couldn't believe his eyes. Was this about all Emma's or his wife? It seemed so close to reality, Harvey wondered. When he opened his eyes in the morning, the magazine was still lying next to him, open on the page about the Emmas. After walking his daughter to school, he called his mom. "Hi, Mom. You can come over to my place after work today, but not to rush into anything. I need you for a long time." "Harvey, you're scaring me. Did something happen?" "Yes, there is, and I need to talk to you." "Is Elizabeth okay? Is she okay?" "Yes, she's at school. Will you come, Mom?" "I will. Do you have dinner?" "Why don't I make you something?" "That'd be nice." Lucy arrived a little early, and when her son opened the door, she had dinner on the table. "Grandma, this is so good. I love your roast." "You're welcome, my dear." When Elizabeth ran away to do his homework, the son and his mother moved to the sofa and he couldn't start talking for a long time. Lucy helped. "Will you have time to consult with me while Emma's away? She won't be here anymore." His mother's eyes doubled in size, but she could ask nothing, so Harvey went on. "She ran away to Germany with some Walter. She left me a note where she confessed that she loved this German and Elizabeth had enough love from her grandparents. What am I to do?" Mother sat there unable to utter a word. Harvey, seeing that she was confused, asked, "I've been thinking all day today at work. How would you feel about me sending Emma's daughter greetings, some gifts, so she doesn't feel abandoned? I'll set up a page on the internet in Emma's name and write to her. How else can I help my little girl? It's the third day she's been walking around like she's in the water." Lucy didn't answer right away. She paced the kitchen and thought, digesting all the information, and couldn't understand how a mother could abandon her child for a man, even if he was Walter. Then she sat down, took her son's hand and said, "Son, you want to protect your daughter. Protect her from unpleasant experiences is understandable and worthy of a father. But don't protect her from reality. And if Emma comes back, then what? Mom will be the kindest, most loving and gentle mom in her daughter's eyes. I mean, she wrote her letters, sent her presents and greetings, right?" "So, Harvey's nervous. What's your point?" "What I'm getting at is that you need to tell the kid the truth. Not all at once, just prepare her slowly. Let the 2 months you told her go by, and in that time, prepare the child. It'll be hard, I'll grant you, but it won't be a lie, even if it's to save her. Don't make excuses for Emma. The note clearly says she doesn't want Elizabeth." "I think so, Mom, but in this advice, you're not feeling sorry for Elizabeth. You're telling her to cut the truth out of her uterus." "Quite the opposite. I feel sorry for my granddaughter, and I want to protect her from double lies. If you're honest with your daughter, she'll appreciate it. And besides, you and I talked about what happens if Emma comes back, and what if she doesn't? You're gonna spend the rest of your life keeping these pages, giving gifts from your non-existent mom. I don't think that's right." She looked at her son and felt sorry for him. He even looked older, she thought. "I'll probably sleep over at your place. It's closer to work than here." Harvey stood up, swaying from the information he had heard. Maybe Mom was right, he asked himself, but he couldn't answer that question yet. The 2 months given to him to make a decision were coming to an end. Harvey considered his mother's advice the most correct, but also the most difficult. After waiting for Elizabeth to come home from school, he finally sank down on the couch and felt tired, running around the apartment as if that would help him make a decision. Harvey was already waiting for her, leaning against the back of the couch, thus giving his back a rest, and watched with bated breath at the door. Elizabeth came in, but he had no time to say anything before she put her palms on his face and said, "Now you will not dissuade me from saying that Mama has left us." There was nothing left for him to do but to add, "I want my daughter. Don't worry, Dad. I love you very much and we'll manage together. You are very handsome, kind, wise," and the girl kissed him on the cheek. He did not hide his worries, gave free rein to his emotions, and tears flowed from his eyes. Cried Daddy. Men are ordinary people and experience the same as we women. Here Harvey could not smile at his smart daughter. He could not believe that everything had worked out so well, and he sees his girl completely calm and happy. "Thank you, my daughter, for getting it right. We're really gonna make it. The closest people to each other should help each other, and you're the closest person I have. I love you." "I love you too, Daddy. I'm going to tell you a secret that I wasn't going to share with you, but I'm going to tell you today to cheer you up. I've always loved you more than Mommy. I felt that she was not very interested in me, and you always came to me and played. And I remember you used to read me fairy tales." She wrapped her warm hands around his neck and said like a grown woman, "Let's go to lunch. Grandma Lucy brought her special roast yesterday." The man's soul became calm. There were butterflies flying and birds singing. Lucy went straight to her son's house after work. Her granddaughter opened the door. The cheerful dragonfly immediately ran to her room. "Probably, so did not say anything," thought the mother, and went into the room. "Well, what? So did not have the guts to tell the truth." "Mother, you don't know how well everything turned out. Elizabeth knows everything and doesn't worry." Lucy said in astonishment, "Well, tell me." And Harvey told his mother everything in detail. "Do you have anything to drink?" she asked. "Only vodka." "That's wonderful." They drank a small drink for Elizabeth and then talked for a long time about how to go on living. Emma's parents called Harvey and apologized for the deed of their wayward daughter. "Harvey, well, you do not deprive us of the opportunity to see Elizabeth," asked him. "Of course I won't. Elizabeth loves you and misses you, so you can take her for the weekend if she wants to." "Thank you so much." The parents were experiencing such a betrayal of their daughter, and Harry even threw such a hurtful phrase in his heart. That's what non-native blood means, and waving his hand, went to his office. Naomi thought it was a cobblestone in her garden and secretly wiped her tears. And Harvey and Elizabeth, since that day, as if a whole new life had begun. The man's heart slowly came away from the betrayal of his wife. After 2 years of absence from his wife, he decided to file for divorce. Trusting relationship with his daughter, the father valued very much. He tried to share with her his successes at work, and she told him her secrets, but sometimes asked Grandma Lucy to talk to her. Harvey understood that she was a girl and she might have quite girlish questions for her grandmother. He was only glad that Elizabeth had become so close to her grandmother, who would not teach her bad things. He sometimes looked at his sleeping daughter and admitted grudgingly that she looked like Emma, but he didn't stop loving her. Harvey looked at her, and in his heart, there was a strong feeling of guilt in front of the child for not being able to save the family. Once at work, he overheard a conversation between two girls, and one phrase cut him to the heart. "From good men, wives do not run away to lovers. That's where the dog is buried," Harvey thought then. So there was something about him that didn't suit her. It seems that they did not know each other well. If the husband did not notice the dissatisfaction of his adored wife, and she didn't see fit to make any changes in their relationship. Apparently, that's what led to this outcome in the family relationship. As time went on, Elizabeth became an adult. Having finished the 9th grade, she decided on her profession. Now she wanted to become a doctor. The girl was serious about chemistry, mathematics, biology, although in all subjects she studied on excellent. All 3 years, which remained before graduation, she tried to study hard, preparing to enter the medical school. On New Year's Eve, she brought a boy home. "Daddy, I'd like you to meet Barry." "Hello, Harvey." He looked at him and saw him as someone who wanted to take away what was most precious to him. Harvey turned to him. "Barry, can Elizabeth spend New Year's Eve with me?" "With you where?" Well, first at my house with my parents and then to a club. That's very interesting, but I'm not a parent, so Elizabeth shouldn't spend the New Year's Eve with me. Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. Maybe we'll do this. We'll celebrate New Year's Eve at your place, and then we'll go to the club to dance. That way, no one gets hurt. Barry, am I remembering right? Yes. So, here's the deal. Elizabeth and I will decide when, with whom, and where. Okay. Goodbye. Sorry again, and he's on his way out. Daddy, can't you be a little nicer? No, you can't. I see him for the first time, and he starts dictating how I should celebrate New Year's Eve. Who is he? Your dad is alone, and he wants to be with his daughter, too. If I were you, I'd explain it to him, and you'd stand there and listen. You're not a speechless creature, are you? Am I wrong? You're right, Dad, but I've been with you all year, and I want to spend this holiday with my friends. Elizabeth, what's going on? Are we fighting now? Did I do something to offend you, or did you not like Barry? What should I say to her? That he can't bear to see these strange guys claiming his girl and dictating how he should celebrate New Year's Eve. Lucy called to wish her son a happy new year, and she knew something was wrong. Is everything okay? You're not in a festive mood. The news that his daughter would celebrate New Year's Eve with a young man took him by surprise, although why should he be surprised? She was a mature, beautiful girl. Harvey didn't skimp on her outfits, so she was always well-dressed. There was no question of not allowing her to date a boy at all. More than anything else in Celine, the father was afraid of losing his daughter's trust, important to both of them. Harvey feared the inevitable, realizing that someday his adored daughter would leave him and start her own family. So he didn't tell Lucy about his fears. We're fine. We're getting ready for the holiday. We bought a tree. We're decorating it. Oh, son, who are you kidding? Will you come to our New Year's Eve party? I will if you invite me. Harvey, you should be thinking about your personal life instead of watching your daughter's every move. You're suffocating her with your love, and you can't do that. She's a sensible girl. Just loosen the reins a little. It won't make her love you less. If you strangle her, she'll hate you. She's going to spend New Year's Eve with some guy. Do you know him? Who is he? Where he lives? Who are his parents? No, I don't know. Then find out. It's easier to keep out than to act diplomatically. Keeping good relations with your daughter. I'll come over and talk to my granddaughter. Grandmother, as always, was helpful. Elizabeth, who's the boy you have with you? How long have you known him? 2 months, maybe a little more. That's a bit short, and already you want to go to the club with him tonight. Grandma, he's a nice guy. He goes to our school. He's a year older than me. His grandparents live in our house. I haven't been to his house, though. So you don't know his parents? No, I don't. Lisa, you listen to me. I think with an unknown boy should not go to the club at night. Get to know him better. Meet his parents. If he's a smart guy, he'll understand you. But if he's stupid, you don't want him. You agree with me? Not really, Grandma. It's not like I'm going to marry him and he has to introduce me to his parents. What if he meets another girl tomorrow and introduces her to his parents? We're just in the same company and parents have nothing to do with it. Do you trust him that much? Grandma, we won't be alone. There's a group of us. A few people from our class and some from his. But you'll spend New Year's Eve with Dad. It's a family holiday. Grandma, it'll be fine. Dad's not worried. I almost had a fight with him for the first time today. But leave the address of his parents or grandparents. All right. Barry walked home with his head down. Why didn't Harvey like his proposal? It was a great idea. Hang out with everyone for a while, then go to the club. Well, his first suggestion was stupid, to say the least. To sit with his parents, as if Elizabeth's father wasn't a parent. He wondered, nay resented, why her father was so worried about her. He might change his mind about going with Liska after all. There are so many girls around who are ready to go wherever the first guy in the class calls them. But no, he was drawn to her, to Elizaveta. With these thoughts, he came home and locked himself in his room. His parents immediately realized that his plan had failed miserably. You were right, Olga said to her husband. They probably sent him away. He was too confident. How could they say no to such a handsome man? And they turned him down. You know, I'm glad our son learned a lesson like that. He'll think with his head and not with the seat he's sitting on. Come on, go comfort him like only you can. Give him hope. I'm betting you. Well, he's in a bad mood for a holiday like this. His father came into the room. Barry was lying face down on the bed, and if it had been a girl, you would have thought she was crying. The man did not ask the reason for this mood, but began his story, then wondered himself how he did it. You know, son, one boy like you now also fell in love with a girl. He fell in love with a girl for life. But her parents did not appreciate such an impulse of a young man, and with distrust let their daughter go out with this boy. He saved money on breakfast to treat his girl with ice cream, in the movie to take her to the last row to kiss her. And one day, they took a walk on the boardwalk and were late getting home. Then her mom said to this boy, "Young man, how can I trust you with my daughter if you don't respect her at all? I asked you to be home at 10 o'clock p.m., and you came an hour late. If you can't do such a small thing for my daughter, you better find another girl. Don't come to our house again." Barry stood up and looked at his father, wanting to ask what happened next. Then this hero had to apologize for being late and promised that it would never happen again. And the boy kept his word. No matter how much he wanted to go camping with the girl or stay late at the disco, they were always home exactly at 22:00. And the girl's mom, Maddie, so this is my grandmother? Yes, son, that's your grandmother, and that girl's your mom, and that boy's a fool who thought he could have everyone at his feet. That's your dad. That's the way it is, Barry. So you're not the only one who's been in trouble. I've been in trouble too. You're my son for a reason. It's nice to have a girl at home and growing up with love and someone to worry about her. I won't tell you what to do. You're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. Thank you, Father. I understand. Well, good. Don't be sad. It's good to have smart, loving parents who will give you a clue when you need it. He lay there for a long time thinking about what to do to make Harvey realize that he was a reliable man and loved his daughter. Meeting back at the school, Barry asked Elizabeth what had happened there after he left. What happened? Grandma came, began to ask what's up. Daddy was offended and kept repeating why you did not take him for a parent. Well, all in all, it wasn't fun. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. I rushed into things, but I'll make it up to you. How? What are you going to do? Don't scare me. Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine. The next day in the evening, Barry went to Elizabeth's house. He was even glad that everyone was there. Elizabeth's father and grandmother all looked at him expectantly and were not going to help him with leading questions. He had made a mess of it himself, and he had to get out of it. The boy took a deep breath and said, "Harvey, I apologize. I was wrong to impose my New Year's Eve wishes on you. If you think that Elizabeth doesn't know me much yet, and it's too early for her to go to the club with me all night, then if you don't mind, I'll stay with Elizabeth at your place." He fell silent and lowered his head. To support Barry, Elizabeth stood beside him and took his hand. Lucy decided to save the situation. "I don't mind at all, and I'm even glad of your proposal, young man. You have decided very wisely. It's up to Papa," and she looked sternly at her son. She had just told him that it was time to take care of himself, not to look out of the window at Elizabeth every minute. "I'm in for it," said a satisfied Harvey. But after New Year's Eve at home, her father let her go to the club, with a promise to be home no later than 4 o'clock in the morning. "You hear that, Barry? No later." "Don't worry, Harvey, we won't be late." He waited for his daughter. It was exactly 4 o'clock when he and Barry reached the driveway and kissed goodbye. "When did my little girl grow up? She's kissing already. He seems like a nice guy. He's got a sly rap, if you don't mind. Good for him. Elizabeth has good taste. He's handsome, tall. He's a sportsman. You can see his biceps from under his clothes." He did not meet his daughter. He did not want to show her that he waited and did not trust them. He fell right into a peaceful sleep, knowing his daughter was home. From then on, Barry became a frequent guest in the Prokhorov family. Sometimes the young people quarreled, not without it, but they quickly found a common language and made peace. Harvey liked the young man. They could, in the evening, while Elizabeth did her homework, play chess, won another game. And it wasn't always possible for his father to beat Barry. He was a good thinker. He finished school a year earlier than Elizabeth and immediately entered medical school, wanting to continue the dynasty. He wanted to be a surgeon from childhood. A year later, Elizabeth entered the same school. She dreamed of becoming a pediatrician. Having cured all her dolls, she took on her grandmother and father. assuring them that their lungs were not in order. Lucy obeyed the little doctor, and her granddaughter liked it very much. Time flew inexorably, and now the house was preparing a big holiday. First of all, Elizabeth is 18, and secondly, she is a student. There were many guests. Elizabeth invited her school friends, and Barry, of course, came. The party was in full swing when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," said Harvey. In front of him stood his ex-wife, who had run away 11 years before. "I'm here to wish my daughter a happy birthday. Can I come in?" "Why didn't you come to any of the other birthdays and call?" "Or because, as the song goes, once in a lifetime is 18 years, so I thought I'd check in." "Daddy, who is it?" "Here, daughter. Another belated guest has arrived. I don't know if you'll remember her." The girl stood there and stared at Emma. "Daughter, you didn't recognize me. It's me, your mother," and stretched out her arms and wanted to hug the girl. Elizabeth did not run away, but did not rush to the fugitive in an embrace. "I brought you so many gifts, fashionable clothes. Come on, I'll show you everything." "I have guests now. I'll go to them. Then we'll talk." "Let's go in the kitchen. You want some tea?" Harvey suggested it. Lucy wasn't so nice to her ex-sister-in-law. "Oh, who would be missed? Something's gone wrong with our Emma to come running back. You never loved me or wanted your precious son to marry me. What's wrong?" "Right, you're very different from him. But my son loved you, so I never stood in his way. And I never turned him against you. And I'm grateful to you for my granddaughter. A smart and beautiful girl, she's my happiness." "Why did you come here?" "To see my daughter, to wish her a happy birthday. She grew up without a mother after all." "What kind of mother are you?" "Here's the mother," and she pointed at her son. "I always thought that God created woman to love and take care of children, husband, family. And looking at you, I don't even think that. You've always wanted freedom, so you could run away from your child with another man. You call yourself a mother. Please don't make me laugh. That's your truth, and my truth is different. I don't doubt that you will turn everything around and blame your husband, who was both dad and mom to your daughter for 11 years. You knew what kind of father Harvey had always been. That's why you ran away so calmly. You knew your daughter would be all right." The time was approaching 11 o'clock, and the guests began to leave. Barry was the last to leave, congratulating Harvey once more on the birthday girl. Elizabeth came into the kitchen. "Let's talk, Emma." "I'm not your Emma. I'm your mom." "And where are you, Mom?" 11 years were while Dad was around if I was sick, took me to the sea, played, walked, helped me do my homework. You said you brought me clothes, and I don't need anything. You look at my wardrobe. Dad always bought the best, and I never missed you," said Elizabeth and cried. "Daughter, I don't know what your father told you about me, but don't believe him. I'll tell you everything as it really was. You're an adult, you understand everything, and you'll see for yourself who's right and who's wrong. I came for you. Do you know the opportunities in Germany? It's not your backwater. You'll see the world, see how beautiful people live. I know you'll love it. We'll sell the apartment and buy there. I have savings." "Why are you looking at me so surprised?" "You say we'll sell the apartment, but Dad, where will he live?" "On the street." "Why on the street?" "He's coming with us." "Don't you want to ask me if I'm going to Germany, and especially with you? I have a very good job now. I'm the head of the department." "You're the head of the department? For God's sake, you're a loser and a pauper. You can't see beyond your nose. You could be a millionaire in Germany, but here you're a pauper. Well, let's call it a night. It's getting late. I have to get up early for work tomorrow. Go to your parents' house for the night and we'll talk again tomorrow. I'm sure you didn't just come to congratulate your daughter." Emma said goodbye and slammed the door behind her. "I'm going home too," Lucy said. "I'll have to think about it." Harvey called his mother a cab, and the apartment became so quiet, so peaceful after the guests, the music, and the guitar songs. "Thank you, Daddy, for such a holiday." My daughter hugged him and immediately remembered how, as a little girl, she calmed her father and assured him that they would manage, and they did. Emma went to her parents with a heavy heart. She didn't want to see them, let alone talk to them. She thought about staying the night in her apartment, but her ex-husband was determined. When she returned home after an 11-year absence, she was amazed to see what Elizabeth had become. The cute little girl had turned into a real beauty. 18 years old, a fine age when everything was still ahead of her. But what surprised Emma was her daughter's lack of arrogance about her appearance. She thought of her facial features and found a resemblance to herself. I wonder if she realizes what kind of impression she can make on men if she makes good use of what nature has given her, or if she's just as much of a bastard as her loser father, the woman thought angrily. And maybe it's good naivety. Lack of understanding of her beauty will make her even more desirable to men. They like that kind of woman. It will be necessary to introduce her to the right people in Germany. She can't sit in this swamp with her data. That's the way her mother thought. She stood at the door of the apartment she'd lived in for years. Why don't I see any resemblance between me and my parents? Emma suddenly thought, but at that moment the door was opened by her father. How did they greet you? Fanfare? Stop being so sarcastic. I see you're very pleased that Harvey practically kicked me out. You're my parents and you're supposed to support me. But what do? Support you for what? Your inappropriate behavior? Abandoning your child. And for whom? She liked the guy. What do you know? It's you who live your whole life without loving each other. You think I didn't see that? I also wonder how you could give birth to me. I must have been such a bitch because I wasn't the fruit of love that burns young people who've just got married. Your mother was still looking in your mouth, and you sure didn't love her. Shut up. What do you know about love if you couldn't even love your own daughter? You got a golden husband that many women more deserving than you wanted, and he fell in love with you. What could he find in an empty woman like you? I'm beautiful, smart, and many men wanted me, and I made him happy. Emma was startled by her father's wild laughter. His wife brought him a glass of water and sat him in a chair. Anyway, the money you're asking for, we don't have it. We never had it, not even when your grandfather was alive. And he was a deputy minister. My mom and I are retired. We live modestly, but we make do. Well, why do you need such a huge apartment? It's hard to clean and maintain. I'm entitled to that apartment too. Sell it and get a one-bedroom, and the money I get will be enough. If Harvey sells his, I'll be gone and you'll never see me again. You're crazy. Have you thought about where your daughter will live? Of course I have. I'm taking my daughter with me, so I can get my ex-boyfriend to sell the apartment and Harvey can go to his mother's. That's it. No one will be left on the street. I've got it all figured out. Naomi, can you hear what that crazy woman is saying? What a monster we've raised. I wish she'd stayed in an orphanage. Harry, shouted the wife. Yeah, I misspoke. I'd rather have no children than a moral freak like that. We're the ones who raised her like that. We put her in every hole. Every order, remember, not a request, an order. Your father flew at rocket speed to fulfill, and this is the result. I just thank God that she could have given birth to our beautiful granddaughter. What orphanage are you talking about? And what does that have to do with me? Because you're not our real daughter, do you understand? We brought you up, educated you, married you, helped you while you worked, and now that's it. We don't owe you anything more. Forget about the apartment. It's only for Elizabeth. There's nothing for you here. Mom, is he crazy? What's he talking about? What orphanage? He's telling the truth. We took you from the orphanage when you were 3 years old. Your parents were in a car accident. Your mom was a foreign language teacher and your dad was an engineer. That's the truth. If your appetite hadn't grown to such obscene proportions, maybe you'd never have found out about your past. But you've really disappointed us. We may not be the best parents, but we certainly didn't deserve such rudeness. She helped her husband up and escorted him to the bedroom. Then she went to her daughter and gave her the jewelry box. This is all I can do for you. Your grandfather gave it to you, so consider it his help. Good night. And Naomi, hunched over, went to rest. She had aged about 10 years since she had talked to her daughter, but she felt better after they had told her the truth. Emma sat absolutely dumbfounded by the news. I can see why they've been slow to help me. She looked at the jewels and realized that she could get very good money for them. Some were handmade, one of a kind. Her mood improved a little and her resentment lessened. Why all of it to Elizabeth? Lucy's apartment would be enough for her. Why two old people who were about to go to the grave anyway? But they would have done a good deed. She felt tired. Walter. The woman remembered her first days in Germany. It had been happiness, joy, hope for a cloudless future. But not everything had turned out so smoothly. And at the same time, it was banally simple. He was a gambler. She noticed it not at once, but when her jewelry, given by her parents and grandfather, began to disappear. She understood everything. She wanted to leave immediately because she knew that such people do not recover, but only sink and drag others with them. But he swore that he would give up everything, that he loved her and would do anything to make her happy. How much money was spent on treatment, but it was enough for a year or two. And then he'd relapse again. This time he was unlucky. Walter lost to serious people. He fell for the professionals and his cheating tricks, which he always used. They figured it out in a heartbeat. They took him away, beat him up, and for days she didn't even know where he was. Called everyone she knew. No one had seen him. It was only a week later that a young man showed up at her door and explained everything, showing how much money he owed. He said that she, as a spouse, had to pay up. She'd of course had savings, and not small, but she wanted to get out of this situation with the least possible loss. She and Walter had a successful business together. Having drawn up all the papers for the transfer of the business to her and having asked those serious people to meet with him, the lawyer went to him. He told the poor man that Emma would help him out, but that he had to hand over the business to her, and slid the documents to him to sign. Walter shrank back, realized that he had played the game, and signed everything with shaking hands. Now Emma had sole ownership of the business, but she had to pay off the debt. Walter's waiting for her help. She would have to push Harvey, and she would do it. She woke up by noon, but still felt tired. Her parents weren't home, and Emma decided to look for the deeds to the apartment. She had one crazy thought. The papers were always in her father's study, in a folder labeled apartment, but they weren't there now. Maybe they hid them from me, Emma thought with a grin. Parents did not hide anything. They decided to go to the notary and write a will for the apartment for Elizabeth. It would be calmer, they said to each other. And after breakfast, they went to the notary's office. And Emma did not give up and looked in other places. But everything was in vain. Tired, she drank coffee, lay down some more, and decided to go to Elizabeth's house. The door was not open for a long time, but when her daughter appeared in front of her, she could see that she had headphones in her ears. "How long did you call?" Elizabeth asked, addressing her mother in first name. "Why are you yelling at me? I'm not a stranger to you. Get used to it. I don't like to hear it from you." And she went into the room. Nothing's changed in 11 years. Even the furniture is old. Why can't my father update the look of the apartment? It's all stale. In Europe, they throw these things in the trash long ago, Emma said and said. And when she turned around, she saw Elizabeth sitting with her eyes closed, listening to music. No education, Emma thought, approaching her daughter and taking out her headphones. "I came to talk to you. I want to suggest that you come with me to Germany. It's a different standard of living, different opportunities. You'll feel happy in the midst of this civilization. Let's go. You'll study there. You'll make new friends. How do you feel about that?" Emma, but her mother interrupted her. "I told you not to call me that. What don't you understand?" "Okay, although it's gonna be hard for me to do. You're basically a stranger to me. You weren't there for me during the most difficult moments of my life. And now you show up and call me to come with you. And you're offended that I don't call you mom. My dad was my mom. When I was in 3rd grade, my dad was shy about bathing me, so I would go to my grandmother's house or she would come to our house. I missed you guys, but I got used to it. I love my father very much. He is a deeply decent and kind man, and I'm not going to leave the United States for Germany." This deeply decent and kind man lied to me, humiliated me, and did everything to make you wean off your mom. How many letters I've written, how many tears I've shed, missing you. At that time, the door to the apartment opened and Harvey came in. The daughter and mother were talking loudly and they didn't hear the door click. "Did you write me letters?" "Of course I did. And this decent man didn't give them to you." Harvey clenched his fists, but did not interrupt the conversation. "The only reason I left was so he wouldn't take away my parental rights. Why would my adoring father want to do such a cruel thing to you? I think he got another woman." "Dad? Well, that's where you're overreacting. If there was a reason, I would have seen that woman, but there were no other women in this house during your absence, except for the grandmothers. You're just a kid. He was just going to her. You're a big girl and you realize that a man can't be without a woman for long, unless he's impotent. You've never had a man? You've never cheated on Daddy." Harvey tensed, ready to come out of hiding at any moment. "No way, I loved Harvey. Still, it's strange what you're saying. Why did you have to go so far away? Harry's grandfather has such a fancy apartment. You could have lived there and seen me. I could have lived with you and Dad. Why did you leave? And why did your dad want to terminate your parental rights? It's not like it's something you just do at will. Do you need a good reason? Emma didn't expect that question. She didn't expect such a serious conversation from her daughter. The woman thought it would be enough to tell her what a scoundrel her father was, that's all. But here her daughter was clearly stumping her with her questions. Wife was struggling with two feelings: to go into the room, take out the last letter of the note, and show it to the daughter so that she realizes everything, from the first to the last word of the mother, is a lie. And on the other hand, he would forever deprive Elizabeth of communication with Emma, for if the daughter knew the truth, his ex-wife's attempts to smear Harvey would fail. He hesitated. You have to understand, Elizabeth. I can't tell you everything. Or rather, you can't understand everything. The relationship between a man and a woman is a very complicated one. Emma, I must disappoint you. I probably would have believed you if I hadn't once found what's called your farewell letter in Daddy's files. At that moment, the world called Mom collapsed for me. I remembered that note by heart. Harvey, I'm going to Germany with Walter. We love each other and want to be together. I think Elizabeth has enough love from her grandparents and yours. We've never been close, so she won't notice my absence. I want to be happy. Goodbye, and I'm sorry. I'll text or call my parents. Emma, you say you've never been with a man, so it wasn't your dad who made you leave. But you ran away from us. Sorry, but I'll call it what it is, with a lover. And I really had enough love from my grandparents, and especially my dad. After reading that note, I never thought of you again. So don't lie to me. And she put in her headphones to continue listening to music. Harvey came out of this hiding place and stared at Emma, eyes wide open. You're even worse than I thought you were. Go on. Get out and don't show up here again. No, wait, buddy. This apartment we bought together, and I'm entitled to my share. And if Elizabeth comes to Germany with me, then she and I are entitled to 2 shares in the apartment. But you can buy them from us, especially since I've advertised my share. If you want to live with a neighbor, be my guest. Elizabeth's not going anywhere with you. She's made that very clear to you. You don't need a daughter. For 11 years, you've done without her. You're a bad example for her. A phone call interrupted a heated conversation. Yes, come and see it. It's a 3-room apartment. I'm waiting. What are you thinking? I'm not going to sell the apartment. I have a job here. My daughter's at school. What are you doing all of a sudden? I have a right to this apartment too. Hurry up, or you'll be living with strangers. I've been paying for your share for 11 years. It's been mine for a long time. You shouldn't have. I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, but I didn't want to be deprived of our apartment for non-payment. That's why I paid. I consulted a lawyer. You're not entitled to anything here. Take your stuff and go back where you came from. Well, you're gonna regret this. A battle lost, but not a war, Emma said angrily and slammed the door of the apartment she hated. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything, although she wanted to punish her ex for doing without her, for not persuading her to stay, and most importantly, for being able to earn her daughter's love and respect. She was angry that her savings would have to lose weight, all because no one was willing to help her, although in her own opinion, she was entitled to everything. After staying with her parents for a few more days, Emma left. The goodbye was dry, without hugs or kisses. When she opened the door and turned around, she looked at her parents, at her father, who was gray-haired, and at her mother, who was trying to prolong her youth and was dyeing her hair. She smiled indifferently and managed to say thank you and goodbye. Naomi cried, after all. For many years the girl had called her mom, and she was happy to see the child grow up. Don't worry, you did your best. Harry smiled at his wife and began to reassure her that her daughter was on her feet and would not be lost. Let's go and have some tea, he said, putting his arm around his wife's shoulders and leading her into the kitchen. Despite the fact that there was no crazy love between the spouses, at least not on Harry's part, Emma was right. They had lived their lives calmly, respectfully, trying to support each other in times of need. Looking ahead, it must be said that Emma will never come to her parents again, and Elizabeth and Harvey will see them off on their last journey. After Emma left, father and daughter had a long secret conversation. Elizabeth told her father that for a moment she felt disappointed when she heard Emma's blatant lies and was glad she knew the truth. "How did you find the letter? I had hidden it so far away. I don't know why I didn't tear it up and throw it away. It's not too late to do it tomorrow, lest your grandchildren read it." "Daughter, your way of talking and reasoning make you look older, and that impression is even stronger when I look at your new hairdo. But anyway, you're smart and beautiful. Let's not tell Grandma about Emma coming. She'll get upset, feel sorry for me, pat me on the head, say I'm a poor kid. But I'm not poor at all, I'm the happiest." Though she looked like Emma, Harvey looked at her daughter and marveled at the thought that she had everything her mother did not. He never ceased to be amazed at her kindness, her decency, how much she knew. There was nothing ostentatious or contrived about her. His daughter was his pride. Meanwhile, Emma was landing at Frankfurt am Main, Germany's largest airport. When she arrived home, she immediately called Walter's mother and explained everything that had happened to him. "Frau Martha, I'm leaving. I don't want to live with your son anymore. I hope you will understand and not judge me. I did a lot to cure him, but I couldn't. I'm calling you so that when he arrives, he won't start drinking and gambling again, making debts. You'll have to pay for him now. I'll leave him a letter explaining everything. I'm waiting for you." Then, after calling her lawyer, she asked him to go with her and be a witness to the transfer of the money. She decided to keep the jewelry and pay with her savings. She didn't want to rush into selling them. Toward evening, Frau Martha arrived. She was a tall, dry, typical German woman. Her blue eyes, faded with age, gave her appearance a somewhat intimidating look. The money for Walter had been handed over. He was promised to be released, and Emma was ready to leave. With a nod to Mrs. Martha, she got into a cab and never returned to the city again. A year later, Emma would marry a lawyer 10 years older than herself. Their offices were next to each other, and God told them to pay attention to each other. They both escaped loneliness by complimenting each other. The energetic Emma, always in a hurry with one idea overtaking another, and Henry, calm, judicious, never making hasty decisions. Emma's life got better. She calmed down and even got a little better, which pleased her husband very much. The woman only scolded herself for having put up with this idiot, a slob who could not pull himself together and quit playing. It was probably the only time she thought about him. Emma remembered her daughter 2 years later, on her 20th birthday. She called to congratulate her. There was no conversation because no one was waiting for her call. No one needed her. The woman was not upset, but just balked at the fact that there were some distant relatives in the United States. Time ran inexorably forward, and opening her eyes in the morning, Elizabeth realized that this was the last day of her life as a bride. Today, she would marry Barry and they would live happily ever after and die on the same day. The bride was finishing her degree, the groom his internship. They both didn't want to wait any longer. Studying at the same institute, they saw each other very seldom. Sometimes they could not meet for weeks. Barry studied in one building, Elizabeth in another, so they could only return phone calls. During this time, both realized they were jealous. Elizabeth was always in the thick of things on the course, so she was never alone. Barry didn't like it. It's impossible to catch you alone, always someone dragging you around. You don't suffer from loneliness either, and this Nat of yours is just glued to you. I don't give a damn about that Nat. I don't care whether she's there or not. Her plans are her problems. So they quarreled, and once they broke up for 6 months. It was at this point Elizabeth almost failed the session, but then pulled herself together and passed everything, but ashamed to say how. This time was remembered for the rest of her life. She, in general, did not expect to meet him ever again, but fate had its own plans. And the boys made up. Today was their wedding day, and tomorrow they would be husband and wife. Elizabeth smiled at these thoughts, not imagining herself in this new and difficult role. Still, it warmed her to think about it, especially since she loved Barry. Strangely, her list of suitors was quite short. She didn't need anyone but this strong and reliable man. Harvey was worried too. He was giving his only daughter in marriage and preparing for his new status as father-in-law. He didn't know, of course, what kind of man he was and how he should behave with his son-in-law. But after thinking about it, he decided not to change anything about Barry. He liked the guy and he was giving him his daughter relatively with a calm heart. There weren't very many guests. Girlfriends, friends of the guy's, relatives on one side and the other. A month ago, the parents had met and liked each other. That's important too. Still have to meet at family parties, and it's nicer when they are nice people. It was still an hour before the party and the guests were already starting to gather. Harry and Naomi stood back and saw all the guests invited to the party. A large crowd was entering the hall, led by Celine, no longer Celine, and Archie. He recognized his son immediately. Two young women were walking beside him, both laughing, and he hugged them both. He apologized to his wife and stopped abruptly beside Celine. She frightenedly backed away from him and her spouse held her by the elbow. And Harry stared into those familiar brown eyes, huge eyes, net once his Selena's. "I'm sorry I startled you. Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" "What's wrong?" Selena asked unhappily. "Is that my son? I told you years ago." He didn't let her finish. Yes, I remember, it's only your son." "Yes, my Anthony." The woman minted every word so Harry would realize he had a different father. "You never give me the slightest hope of ever telling my son that I'm his father. Just as you took away that hope of happiness years ago by abandoning me to my fate." "Yes, I did a terrible thing, but fate has punished me enough. We don't have kids. Naomi never had a baby." "How not? And the girl you kept walking around the yard with?" "That's Emma, my foster daughter. We got her from the orphanage." "Good for you. You've made one child happy. Tell me about your son. Who's with him?" "He's hunting two women at once. On the right is his wife Victoria, and on the left is his sister Veronica. And across from Anthony is my son Alex and his wife Katie. And surrounding them are my grandchildren." "What did Sergi become and where does he live?" "Sergi is a computer genius. He has his own company. His eldest son is a lawyer, married but no children yet. The youngest is finishing school and wants to work for his father, and the third girl. That's how big Sergi's family is." "Doesn't he know Archie's not his own?" Selena looked at him with regret. "You still don't get it. Archie is the closest thing he has to family. He brought him up and made a man out of him. Sergi is a real man, responsible, provides for the family. He's the real head of the family. What's the use of being his biological father who forced his mother to have an abortion? That's not something a real father would do. So don't give yourself the idea that you're the father. Remember, you're nobody." She spoke harshly, taking pity on this already completely gray-haired man. "I get it. Yeah, what side of the wedding are you invited to?" "The groom's side." "What's that supposed to mean?" "That's what it means. Barry is my youngest Alex's son. What are you doing here? I don't understand." "Well, Elizabeth is my granddaughter, Emma's daughter." He looked at Selena and was frightened. She was standing there pale, open-mouthed and gasping for air. "Oh my God, so you and I are related after all? It's a shame, but there's nothing I could have done. Barry's very fond of Elizabeth. I like her too." "Yeah, where's your daughter?" Harry immediately became sad, and although he had been preparing for this question, it still took him by surprise. "She couldn't come. She was working abroad." "You're lying again," Selena replied sharply, "but I don't care about that. It's your family. Goodbye and stay away from mine." Harry looked for his wife with his eyes but couldn't find her. His legs were shaking and he sat down in the chair that stood in the hall, closed his eyes to visualize his son once more. "Harry, why are you crying?" his wife asked him. "Yes, I am crying. Not every day. Granddaughters get married again, you lie," said the man to himself, covering his eyes. "We asked all the guests to go to the hall," heard all the loud voice of the wedding organizer. The young people sat at the head of the table and were quite nervous. For them, this was a momentous day. It was their first and main love ball, which would be remembered forever and would open a new family life for them. Barry kept his eyes on Elizabeth. "You're embarrassing me. Don't stare so hard. Who am I to look at? You're my wife now. And then you look so pretty in that wedding outfit." Toastmaster joked a lot, organized games, dances, led the chanting of bitter in general, worked hard. In the midst of the celebration, the door to the hall slowly opened and a woman entered it. Finding the one who had invited her, she walked briskly over to Casey. "Casey, I'm sorry I couldn't make it earlier." She sat down next to the woman. Harvey was watching. He didn't know this woman. He'd never seen her at his mother's. Who is she? And why is she at the wedding? Meeting his mother's gaze, he nodded and asked who it was. But Casey gave him a thumbs up, from which Harvey realized that explanations lay ahead. The dancing part of the evening was opened by the young people with a beautiful waltz. The grandmother, looking at her granddaughter, wept and furtively crossed her lips, whispering something. And Harvey kept looking at the strange woman. She was about 35, a searing brunette, short in stature, stocky. Harvey liked her. He had long since forgotten that feeling, the pinching of his heart. As in his youth it had been simple, but now he was in a stupor. He was struggling with two feelings. Go sit down. Why the fuck does she need you? The grandchildren will be here soon. And he turned sharply and went to the seat. But the inner voice was working, even on a holiday like this. Where are you going? Who are you trying to convince yourself or this woman that you had your day? How are you gonna live your life? Her daughter's married, it's time, and she cut the cord with you. She has a family of her own in which you will have a place, but a small one. He stopped, turned around abruptly, and before he could change his mind, took a quick step toward the woman. She was standing next to her mother and chatting sweetly. Can I invite you to dance? Looking at Ladaka and receiving approval, went to dance. Let's get acquainted. Completely daring, said Harvey. I'm Ariana. And I'm Harvey. I know you in absentia. Casey told me a lot about you, so I know more about you than you know about me. It's not fair. We need to correct that imbalance. I agree, Ariana smiled, baring her white teeth. She was even prettier up close. Beautiful eyes with fluffy lashes, sensual lips, and hair that fell in large waves over her shoulders that I wanted to run my fingers through. Oh, what bold thoughts you're having, the inner voice said. Harvey shuddered, but the voice praised him. Well done, that means you still have a man in you. You want a woman, which is natural, and she seems to want you. Harvey looked into Ariana's eyes and suggested we switch to you. With pleasure, the woman replied cheerfully. The music ended and immediately both were confused. Both had the same question swirling around in their minds. What's next? And let's drink to my favorite daughter, and then to acquaintance. That's a great idea. Casey was happy. She met this lovely woman on the boardwalk, walking alone. The woman's fate had not been easy. Her parents, authoritarian people, had divorced her husband, deciding that he was not suitable for her, and kept her to themselves until the last, saying that she owed them everything. Ariana did not argue, but fulfilled her filial duty. When her parents didn't, she thought she was old. Casey brought her back to life and invited her to the wedding to introduce her to her son, who understood his mother's message correctly. God willing, they'll make it work. Looking toward her son, she saw a man and a woman happy with each other. Hearing the first bars of the music, Elizabeth invited her father to dance. A slightly graying man in an impeccable gray suit and his daughter in a gorgeous white dress swirled around the room in the rhythm of the tango. Barry didn't leave his mother without a dance either. Compared to the tall and athletic son, she seemed small and fragile. And at the end of the dance, pulling his mother off the floor, the son spun her around. Admiring Anthony, Harry kept his eyes on him. Mom, that gray-haired man over there keeps looking at me. Who is he? Yeah, no, you're imagining things. That's Elizabeth's grandfather. He doesn't know anybody around here, so he's looking at me. Never mind. Veronica came up to Anthony. Come on, brother. Let's dance, or I'll be gone and I won't see you again for a long time. Veronica lived in Washington and worked in the newsroom as an illustrator. She met her future husband, the editor-in-chief, when she came to show her work for children's books. It was a fortunate coincidence when a hobby became a profession. The ability to draw was her gift. Her parents noticed it and did not ignore it, thinking about their daughter's future profession related to drawing. Life showed that they were right. Her drawings were put on the editor-in-chief's desk, so he fell in love, first with her work, and seeing a tall, slender girl, he fell in love with Veronica as well. Despite the important appearance of the editor-in-chief, he was pleasant and easy to talk to. Strong, muscular body, thick cap of hair, and a stunning smile charmed the girl and drove her crazy. After 2 months of dizzying romance, Veronica married Tony and never regretted it. He idolized her and promoted her on all fronts. She had orders for foreign books as well. After the birth of twins, Veronica a little withdrew from the business, but Gleb, taking a nanny, gave the young mother the opportunity to rest and little by little to do what she loved. Now the children were finishing school and were about to enter adulthood. "How are you, sister?" Sergey asked. "I'm fine, you two. I see everything worked out. There, our children are communicating. We need to somehow, Sergey, that they see each other more often, or all the family ties will be broken." "I agree. We'll think of a better way to do it." He kissed her on the cheek and went to his wife. The time was approaching midnight and the guests began to disperse. A suite in the hotel was rented for the young couple. It was obvious that they were tired. Elizabeth was lying on her husband's shoulder and was eager to take a shower and rest. Selena saw Harry and his wife come upstairs, but before he left, he looked in her direction and mentally said goodbye. As she looked after him, she let go of all resentment and forgave him. Surprisingly, she felt better immediately. She was grateful to him that he did not ruin her life with Nikita, did not sue for the opportunity to see her son, and let God decide the rest. She was not without sin. Harvey called a cab, took his mother home first, then Ariana, but before he left, he arranged a meeting. He felt good with that woman, relaxed. In a year, Harvey would propose to her and they'd be married. In 2 years, he'd be a second-time dad and grandfather. What wonders life has to offer. Elizabeth and Barry will soon move in with Anthony, who will help with Barry's job and the apartment. Life is beautiful and it continues in our children and grandchildren. To see them grow up, we should decide before they are born that a child should be loved and accepted for what it is, not to break it, not to make it the center of the universe, but to respect it. Then, in our old age, we will have children and grandchildren, and we will have a peaceful and happy old age, because parents feel good when their children feel good.